We're all expecting Luka Bogavatz to be cleared by the NCAA, but hey, it's the NCAA, so who knows what could happen. The key for Carolina, be prepared for anything.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, September 25th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. Want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like the Tar Heel players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later in the show for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward segment. Mazda, move and be moved. Hey, I want to welcome in all the everydayers that are here with us. I want to welcome in all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members. Was literally just chatting with them just a second ago, and all our Locked On Tar Heels Insiders program folks. Actually just sent them a message a second ago as well. If you want to join those groups, the links are in the show notes. Joining me on the show today, as always, on a good Thursday is our buddy, Coach Bill Robinson, the head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes. He is a 2-decade veteran of Carolina basketball school. That's Carolina Summer Basketball Camp. Has also written a book about it. It's called, appropriately, Carolina Basketball School. You need to go get your copy today. You can find it at Amazon. Email Coach Rob. He'll get you a signed copy and lots of other great ways. You can find it at Alumni Hall on Franklin Street and great places like that. Here's what Coach Rob and I are talking about today. Number one, a player this week got cleared by the NCAA who had played professionally in the G League. So what's up with Luka? We want to talk about that. We're waiting on the clearance, but what happens in the meantime? How do you prepare for any eventuality? Where we're going to go after that is last year. We were so in on Cade Tyson, and unfortunately, Coach, that was a bad call by all of us. Things did not go well, and now we're all a little gun shy. Is it going to happen again? And then finally, earlier this week, we had Coach Jerod Haase on the show. A great conversation. Go back and check that out if you haven't. But Coach Rob has some fun stories to share about Coach Haase. And also, literally right before we jumped in and recorded, the ACC released the days of the 6 ACC games that were Tuesday or Wednesday. So we'll be in the show as well. Coach, let's talk Luca Bogavatz. We are banking on him getting cleared. He's gone over every other hurdle. Veesaar, the admittance to North Carolina, but now we're just waiting on the NCAA, who famously, whoever knows with the NCAA what's going to happen. So we're banking on him to get cleared. But Coach, put on your big boy coaching hat, because if he doesn't get cleared, whether now or later, how would you proceed?
I think you look at your plan, and let's be honest, we all have plans. We all think the year is going to work out the way we think in September. It never works out that way, and I promise it never will. But we've all talked about him being the perfect, small forward with the ability to play some point guard. We've talked about all this stuff. If what he's done in practice so far, if he has been evaluated by the staff as being a starter, he needs to get starters minutes in practice, because as soon as he gets cleared, he's ready to play right away. So you've got to be ready right away, and he's got to have those reps with the first team. But you also have to be ready in case he doesn't get cleared or doesn't get cleared now. So in my opinion, we'd have a 6-guy rotation. We have 6 guys on that blue team or whatever the starting team would be, and give him as many reps as possible, but also have somebody ready in case he's not cleared immediately, cleared for the first game. And so he's still going to be ready and still prepare as if he is a starter, but be ready in case it doesn't happen either.
And so when you set players, do you just straight up tell them like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen, we're just waiting day by day like you guys are, so here are the various contingencies we're looking at? Do you just be pretty transparent with them about that?
Yeah, communication has to be there, and you want to communicate with your guys. What a first team, second team. We try to be specific down to 1 through 10 and tell exactly who they are. So it gets to 11, 12, it's probably going to be harder for you to get minutes, but they should have a good idea by now. They've seen him plenty of times to be able to know exactly where he fits in. We still hope that he's going to be in that top 5, and he may not be. And if it's not, then it's not. It's a moot point. It doesn't really matter. But I still think he's going to be there. He's going to be in the rotation. If he's not a starter, he's going to be one of the first guys off the bench. So even then, you've got to be ready for all those different options in case something like that does happen. I'm confident he's going to get cleared. I just don't know when. And it does. The NCAA has a reputation of just kind of doing things on their own time, and that stinks for people that need decisions right away. So, but I do think it's going to happen. We just don't know when.
And it feels to me, Coach, as I process, and this is going to sound like, well, duh, of course, Isaac, but there's 4 scenarios, basically, Coach. Either Luka is cleared and cleared prior to the season, cleared and cleared during the season once it's already started, he's denied prior to the season, or he's denied during the season. And so, Coach, I think for me, regardless the answer, if I'm a coach, I would just want to know preseason. Like, obviously, as we've been talking about, you create your contingencies. But in an ideal world, he's cleared preseason like tomorrow, right? Like the sooner the better. But I think as a coach, I would just, even if the answer is a no, ideally and preferably, just tell me before the season starts so that we know what personnel we're dealing with.
Yeah, and that's fair. You would think that would be fair for the request to the NCAA. And maybe you need to get the big guns out. I don't know who they are. Maybe it's Bubba himself with his connections with the NCAA to just send an email and say, listen, we really would appreciate this getting done in a timely manner. We need to know we're trying to get into the season. Is there any way we can kind of push this to the top of the pile? There's got to be, we do that stuff with admissions. If we have a kid that we really need to get admitted quickly for next year, I sent out a request. I did it today. We've got, one of our kids who's one of our top recruits. He's got a lot of offers. We're waiting to find out. And the committee doesn't meet till later in the week. And I said, is there any way we can kind of push him towards the top so we can find out sooner rather than later so we can get an offer? So that I don't think that's unreasonable to ask, especially with Bubba's connections with the NCAA.
And obviously, I mean, it's a different sport, but Carolina experienced this just a couple years ago in football with Tez Walker, who, we found out a couple weeks before the season that he was going to be ineligible. And there was a firestorm and everyone got involved. If I remember correctly, Governor Roy Cooper got involved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was all sorts of stuff. And so if I'm the NCAA, I'm like, I don't want that all over again. So let me just get Luka cleared and let's move on with it. Right. And so, but I do think, because of that whole Tez Walker situation where it was week 4 when he was able to start playing, if I remember correctly, I think everyone's a little bit antsy and like, oh my gosh, can we please not have that again? And so that's what we're waiting and looking on there, Coach.
No, exactly. And you want to know, we've talked about that with recruiting. Yes and no are good answers. The waiting is the hard part. And it doesn't allow you just to be able to just have clarity when it comes to what you're going to do in practice from day to day. And you're constantly changing lineups and all those things work out anyway, but you want to at least know that this guy's here. But if not, it's just like an injury. So you lose a guy to a concussion, you lose a guy to a season-ending injury, you've got to be prepared for the next guy up. And from a coaching perspective, as we communicate it, I don't think they sit there and say, oh, our season's done if he doesn't, Carolina's still really deep. I think Luka puts us over the top, but they're really deep. There's still going to be guys who play every day. We're not going to play 5-on-4. It's not the devastation that everybody thinks it could be. But he obviously makes us better. But there's still guys who can play, and in the long run, the coaching staff has to have a positive outlook towards the future, regardless of what happens in this situation.
Coach, I'm sure I've asked you this before this offseason, but at a very specific level, I would imagine, based on our conversations, you would, if Luka is ineligible or whatever, you would probably either go with Jonathan Powell or Jarin Stevenson as the starting wing. And if it's somebody else, please say that as well. But of those two guys, who would you slot in as the starting 3 if Luka is either ineligible or or maybe delayed eligibility?
Yeah, my pick would be Jonathan Powell, simply because the 3-point shooting is such an important part of it. And the fact that I love Jarin. I think Jarin's great, but he's got to be used more at the 4 and the 5, in my opinion, with this group. And I love James Brown. I don't think he's ready for major minutes right away. I think Jarin's got to be able to play more of the 4 and the 5. And I just think Jonathan Powell is ready. He's played at a high level. He played really well last time I saw him. So I'm just excited about him. And I think he's going to play a good bit regardless of what happens with Luka.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. That's well laid out, Coach. I love it because it's a personnel decision. Where are people needed elsewhere, as well as the skill set and how it slots specifically what Luka would do. Also, zooming out to this, everyone, at a national level, you may or may not have seen that the NCAA actually cleared a guy named Terry, I think is how it's like the French word Thierry. I think it's Terry is how you pronounce it. Darlin, who was granted eligibility at Santa Clara this week, and he had played in the G League for 2 seasons. He's actually the first player the NCAA has cleared after playing in the G League. And so he's going to enter college as a junior eligibility-wise. And so, Coach, I think that brings up this whole conversation again this week is like, oh, we're seeing this elsewhere with the player, even domestically, that has played professionally for a couple years. So surely that precedent says Luca Bogavatz should be cleared. And if not, I think there might be some angst and consternation, and understandably so, amongst the Carolina fan base.
Yeah, it's a great precedent to have. So just to be able to have that case and go in that direction, I think it would give a lot more hope in this direction. It's the same with baseball. We've seen guys who play professionally overseas or something from the different country, or they play minor league ball for a little bit, still be able to get reinstated into a college eligibility with losing some eligibility along the way. They wouldn't come in as freshmen, obviously. So I do think that's a good precedent. I think that gives us hope for the future.
All right, we'll find out what happens, hopefully, again, sooner rather than later. Now, Coach, this time last year, you and I and a lot of other people were singing the praises of Cade Tyson. We thought everything was going to translate well. We weren't worried. He was the sharpshooter the Tar Heels needed on the wing. And oh boy, were we dead wrong on that one. Unfortunately, it did not work out well. Will Carolina have another Cade Tyson situation? Hopefully not, but Coach and I are going to at least look at it and identify if anybody might be a Cade Tyson candidate. We'll look at that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about DoorDash, y'all, it's almost the weekend. It's time to look back to last week and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, which is powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, this player delivered when it mattered most. I want to break it down for you. To me, this is actually less about the stats and the numbers and more about staying ready, because for Carolina, Max Johnson has delivered in a big way now twice this season when called upon because of injury to Gio Lopez. It's been a whirlwind for him from going to being hurt last season, working his way all the way back. Last year, he was QB1. This year, he's QB2. But, man, he has been ready and shown up when his numbers called. That's true professionalism. As he stepped in for Gio last week down in Orlando, went 11 of 19 and threw a touchdown as well. When the pressure was on, Max Johnson certainly came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like he delivered for the Heels, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. You can stack it up all season and save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep that streak alive, and fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and the promo period runs all the way through November 18th. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Y'all, the NFL season is here. In FanDuel, they're making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5, and if that bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. One of the great things about FanDuel is that it fits however you like to play. Maybe it's player props. Maybe it's same game parlay. Maybe you like to wait till the action starts and then jump in live. That's great too. All of that makes every game more exciting. So whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, yours truly is 3-0, by the way. What up? It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to every Sunday. Looking at Carolina basketball, right now the Tar Heels are plus 4,000 in the national championship odds at FanDuel. Maybe you're a big believer in these Tar Heels. That'd be a great opportunity for you at a good level. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, you can get that $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel.com. Coach, it's never fun to be wrong about players in our assessments and our adjustments of them. And I got to tell you, I felt so good about Cade Tyson. Everything seemed to make sense. It tracked his form and all that. And then it just didn't work. And look, that's the reality, is sometimes it just doesn't, whether it's culture or talent or athleticism or whatever it is. That's just, it happens with sports. We misidentify sometimes. And so, Coach, but I think because of that, now everyone is a little gun shy with the assessments of players, right? Like how many, like I've had people say to me this offseason, we were just talking about Luka and how well we think Luka will play for Carolina. Have had people say, well, Cade Tyson, and you guys were high on Cade Tyson, so that's going to happen again. All due respect, Luka's been doing it at a much different level than Cade was at Belmont. But the question is here, Coach, and obviously I want to be mindful and gracious in our conversation here, but if we had to pick someone to be a, quote, Cade Tyson candidate for this year, whether that's transfer portal or freshman or whomever, not necessarily a transfer, who would that Cade Tyson candidate be for you this season?
Yeah, it's a really tough question because we strive to be very positive on this show, and I'm just a guest, and I want to stay a guest, so I don't want to be too negative about people either. The freshmen, we just don't have a whole lot of high expectations, so it wasn't like with Cade where we were expecting so much. I think we're going to get a lot out of those two, especially Derek Dixon. We've talked about him before. I just love his game. I think he's going to play a lot. And Isaiah Dennis is streaky, but he's going to play. And those two guys, but I don't think we're really looking at those two guys as candidates. Kai Evans, you know how much I love him. I just think he's a floor general, and he's not going to be expected to go out there and be the team's leading scorer, even the team's leading assist guy, but he can run the program. So I don't think he's really a candidate either. Luka could be it, but I feel really good about him. He's been playing pro since he was 16, 17 years old. He knows what it takes. The stage is not going to be too big for him. And we've already talked about how much I love Jonathan Powell, and I think he's going to have a big year. So for me, really the only two guys that even could be candidates would be Jaden Young or Zayden High. And Zayden obviously missing a whole year, and there's a lot of expectations. A lot of people think that he's going to come in and get time at the big spots, but I haven't seen Zayden play well, and I hate to say that. And he didn't play well the day we went down to practice this summer, and the workouts there. He didn't have particularly good days either. It's such a small sample size.
Sure,
and it's
sure.
hard for me to say too much about it. If he had played great that day, it wouldn't be one of those guys. But Jaden Young's more. I don't think he's going to get. He doesn't have the expectations either. I think people see him as a second or third, guard, and maybe the fourth or fifth guy off the bench total. He's probably a 9-10 guy in the rotation, maybe even the 11th guy, if depending on how you look at it. So Zayden's the one I think that could be. People looking for him to have high expectations because we need post players, and him just having a hard time filling that expectation.
And I think that's a great way to put and frame all of that, Coach, is it's hard to identify because anybody with high enough of expectation that we have, it's just like, it feels like the floor is there for a lot of those guys, right? And I know when you were saying the two freshmen, obviously we're keeping Caleb Wilson out of that conversation, but when we talk about Caleb, for example, it feels like the athleticism, the defensive capability is going to give him a floor that even if shots aren't falling, it's not going to be a complete bust because he offers other things, right? Like thinking back to Cade, it was just the shooting. That was really all we were planning. I guess the shooting and his ability to get in and score, because he had taken a lot of twos at Belmont as well, but it wasn't like a defensive expectation for him. With Henri, right? We've seen that, and it just feels hard to see a world where a lot of those guys, and obviously we struggled, right? Like we're going to look back 2 months from now and be like, oh yeah, we were clearly missing something. Like that just happens every year, but it's just difficult to see. And so, yeah, I think that brings us then to the guys with lower expectations. And it's interesting, Coach, you talk about Zayden. I had mentioned on yesterday's show, because it was our Zayden preview, how coming into last year, there was some buzz starting to percolate with Zayden, but it felt like a lot of that was due to the fact that Carolina hadn't really been able to get much in the transfer portal in the front court. And so while there's some energy and some rebounding he can bring, it feels like maybe the shooting hasn't necessarily come along yet. And so I think the expectations aren't really there for him.
There's a role for him, and there's minutes for him. Going back to Caleb, I don't think about him as a freshman. I think of him as being a top 10 pick in the NBA draft, and the expectations, I think he's going to fulfill them. So I don't think about him, in those terms. But with Zayden, if he will just do the things, the little things, I do think he can get some opportunity, get some time. So he has to be able to accept that role. And that's a role that, from what I've seen, he wants to be a star. He wants to be the guy. He wants to go out there and start and play 30 minutes and average 15 and 10. And that's me, again, looking from the outside, looking in and seeing. And we all want that. We all want that when we're playing. But when you get to the point where you realize it's not going to happen, he can get 8 to 10 minutes and just fly around the gym, like you said, bring energy, rebound, block shots, and set screens and defend and still be very valuable to the team.
Another one I'm curious to think about, obviously, I would say also because of Seth's athleticism and defense, and because we've already seen it, I wouldn't put him in this category. No. One that I am curious about maybe a little bit is Jarin Stevenson, coach. And here's what I mean with it in this conversation is came into college with such massive expectations of what he was going to do. I think part of it is with his reclass. That's so much harder to do than so many people imagine. We saw it up close and personal the last couple of years with Elliot Cadeau. And I think that Jarin, in his 2 years at Alabama, didn't quite live up to those lofty expectations. So maybe that's brought some of the expectations down.
Definitely.
But if we're comparing the high school expectations for Jarin compared to what he might be able to bring this team, I think in that regard, he might be a candidate for the conversation we're having here based on what we saw in the 2 years at Alabama. Again, I think he is going to trend up at Carolina because he's back home, because it's a new system, new opportunity to flourish. But I think there is some possibility for him to fall into being a candidate for this conversation we're having.
Yeah. I will disagree, and we don't disagree very often, but the reason I disagree is because they're going to need him. When Cade didn't make a shot or two, they could bring somebody else in. If Jarin doesn't make a shot or two, he's still going to play because they're going to need him to play the 3. They're going to need him to play the 4. They're going to need him to play the 5. So even if he's not shooting the ball well, he's going to continue to play, and they'll be more patient. His leash will be a little bit longer. They'll give him time to get things figured out. And again, last time I saw him play, he played great. And I really was impressed. And it's not just him having to score. He does things to defend, rebound, hustle plays. He does all those little things, and he does it. If he can do it quietly, he's not the loud roar and pound to the chest and all that other stuff. Yep. But he just goes to work, and he's like he brings his hard hat and his lunch, and he just comes to work and gets things done and makes a difference. So I do think he'll play a lot more minutes, regardless of whether he gets a great start or not, or makes a shot or two. He's still going to get lots of time.
Man, that's a good word, Coach. Good pushback as well. And that context is helpful too about the necessity of using Jarin in his various roles. So I appreciate that very much. Now, earlier this week, Coach Jerod Haase was on the show, and Coach Rob and I were texting after. He's like, I got some stories. That'd be fun to talk about a little bit more with Jerod Haase. So we're going to ask Coach to share a couple of those and a little piece of maybe some Kansas memorabilia Coach Haase has somewhere, as well as we've got some updates on the 6 ACC games for Carolina that were either or. We now know what day of the week those games are going to fall. So we'll share all that and more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Mazda. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. So this week's moment that moved the game forward is defensive back Will Hardy. Man, this guy has been sitting around waiting his turn at Carolina. He's had some moments, had some other things, but man, he's really getting an opportunity to do it more now. And I just love that and appreciate it about him as a person. Against UCF, yes, it was a frustrating loss, but he had 8 tackles. He and Caleb Koss tied for the team lead with 7 solo tackles, which is also tied for the most in a single game this season by a Tar Heel. Each of those guys, Caleb Koss and Will Hardy, also each had 1 tackle for loss. They're help moving Carolina's ability to win forward in year 1. Better days are ahead for Will Hardy and the Carolina defense. So when you follow what moves you, the unexpected, it's only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Literally right as Coach and I were about to hop in, Carolina announced that the ACC had released the days for each of those 6 games that Carolina had in ACC play that were either Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Of course, Coach, as you would imagine, we still don't have the tip times. At least it's something. We'll take any tidbit of logistical information we can come by. We're like, I don't know, migrants in the desert, just searching for any drop of water we can find. And so here we go. Those games. Tuesday, December 30th against Florida State. This is actually the first ACC game, so no need. This is a good one, Coach. You're worried about these, and so you don't have to cancel your New Year's Eve plans because this game is going to fall on Tuesday, December 30th, rather than New Year's Eve. That game will be at home. Wednesday, January 14th at Stanford. Wednesday, January 21st at home against Notre Dame. Those are the two January dates. And then Tuesday, February 10th, down in Coral Gables at Miami. And then here's a big one everyone's going to want to know. Tuesday, February 17th at NC State. I'm sad about that one. I had a Tuesday night obligation already. And so there you go. That's where this comes back to bite you, is because you got to schedule things. So anyway, postcast, we'll get to it that night, I promise you. And then the final Tuesday or Wednesday is Tuesday, March 3rd. At home against Clemson. That one's good because that's the last week of the regular season, and that Saturday you are on the road at Duke. So that gives you a nice buffer, an extra 24 hours there before going to tackle the Blue Devils and ruining their senior night. They got any seniors? I don't know. So, Coach, there it is, the 6 Tuesday or Wednesdays. We now know 4 of them are Tuesdays, 2 of them are Wednesdays. You can obviously find that on the Carolina schedule. All right, Coach, you said I want to share some Jerod Haase stories. Please hit me with it.
I've got 4 or 5, but I'll go as quickly as I can. The very first interview for the book was with Jerod, and he had obviously written Floor Burns, and he gave me some encouragement about that. So to be able to call him and say, okay, you've been through this, and to get some info from him, it kind of got the whole ball rolling. So I appreciate that very much. At the end of that conversation, I said, hey, by the way, don't forget about my guy, Jack Frost, who's my assistant coach. He's awesome. He's Carolina alum. And a couple years later, he calls me. We're at the Miami airport flying home from the Final Four, and he calls me and says, hey, can I get permission to call Jack? Of course, Jack's standing next to me. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you can talk to him. And he ended up getting the job. So that was really, really cool. What Jerod didn't tell you is Milligan beat UNC one time on the JV side. And it was when Jerod was coaching. Yeah. And he got a technical. Which why in the world would you give a technical to the JV coach at Carolina? You're never going to get that officiating job again. We were up 1, and he ran an out of bounds play to perfection to Denzel Robinson, Coach Steve Robinson's son, and he got a layup at the buzzer and he missed it. And if he had made it, we would have ended up losing. It was the absolute perfect play for ran to the perfect player, and Denzel just missed it. So that was one of my favorite memories.
What year was that, Coach? Do you remember?
I don't. Okay. It was it had to be early 10s, 10, 11, something like that.
Man, Coach Haase conveniently left that out of our conversation.
Yeah, that's amazing. Here's my favorite Jerod story of all time. He was in his second year at UAB, and we scheduled a game to come down and play an exhibition game
at
for
Bartow
us.
Arena?
Yeah, Bartow Arena, and I said, we're going to play on a Sunday afternoon at 2:00, so we're going to come down Saturday. And I said, give us some place in Birmingham that's cool place to eat, something different. I don't want to go to Zaxby's. I don't want to get pizza. Let's do something cool. And he said, well, we got a recruit coming to the house. Why don't you just come after? I was like, to your house? He goes, well, we're going to have steak and, a whole big thing and whatever's left over, you guys can eat. I'll just order some pizzas. I got this big screen TV in the basement. You guys can all go down there and watch football on Saturday. Now, keep in mind, we're playing the next day. This is our opponent's head coach. So we get there. There's a couple steaks left. A couple guys scarfed it up real quick. There's a pile of Domino's pizza in the basement. He had a cooler full of Gatorades. And we're just hanging out down there talking. And at one point, he comes down and says, hey, man, I got to go put the kids to bed. Do you mind? Well, I'll be back. And just leaves us in his basement, watching football. And his basement was like a museum. Every time you go to a Final Four that you get a chair. So he had all this memorabilia. And then he had this door. And it said Kansas basketball on it. So I was like, yeah, what's this? He said, he has the original door from Fog Island Fieldhouse from the coach's offices. So this was, it probably at some point had been Naismith himself, and definitely Fog Island's door. And I said, how in the world do you have this in your basement in Birmingham, Alabama? He had a work study at the gym, cleaning, doing whatever. We all have somebody like that. And, we get our guys' work studies. And his work study was with Coach Williams. So he timed it perfectly one day. He had to go in and clean his storage closet, found the door, went into Coach Williams' office when he was busy, found him when he was kind of distracted and said, "Hey, Coach, I found this old door in there. Would you mind?" He's like, yeah, Jared, go ahead and take it. I don't care. Just do whatever you want with it. So Jared got the original door, from the Kansas basketball office. So it's pretty amazing.
That is a crazy story. I mean, that's like legitimately, that's like college basketball Hall of Fame type,
Yes.
Like just hanging out at Coach's house. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
My goodness.
Yeah. One of the things we used to do, and we've kind of gotten away from it, but when he was there, when CB, Steve Robinson, Joe Holiday, we would just call down and say, "Hey, we got this day off. Can we just come down?" And we would go office to office. And we'd have an agenda. We'd have a list of stuff, and we'd say, "Okay, how do you guys defend ball screens this year? How do you defend down screen? You share us your defensive stations." We would go all through all kinds of stuff. One day, Joe Holiday he gave me film to watch and sat me in his chair and said, "I'm going to work out." And I just sat there in his office. But one day, we went down there, and Jared said, "Hey, we got a recruit here today. I'm not going to have a whole lot of time for you, but I'll do whatever I can." And Jared's, just very famous for that. And we were 10 minutes is all we had with him. He said, if you just go outside and sit down outside, I'll give you whatever I have. Well, while we're out there, that's the Vince Carter story from the book. When Vince came by and we got to meet Vince, and they dedicated Letterman's Way. And it was all because Jared was too busy to spend time with us. And that's the only reason we got to meet Vince Carter. So my last story, and this was a cool story. My aunt was in the hospital in Chapel Hill. And we went down to pick her up, and she was coming back home when we were living in Black Mountain. And she just wanted to see the Smith Center. And it was 10 minutes to 5, and the place closed at 5 o'clock. I text Jared right away. I said, "Hey, is the building still open? My aunt just got out of the hospital. She wants to see the Smith Center. We just want to walk around the concourse. We don't need anything special. I just want to make sure it's open." He said, "Yeah, it's open. We'll make sure you get in." Got to the concourse. We opened up the doors. Jared's waiting for us.
Oh my gosh.
And he takes us down to the floor, and I get to see the court. And we took us in the locker room. Well, sure enough, Hansbrough walks in, and my aunt, just about melts into a puddle. And, Hansbrough's her favorite player. And again, nothing like that happens without Jared, and nobody else does that. At that level, to have somebody to be that humble and that willing to share his time with us. He probably could have went home at 4, but hung around till 5 to be able to have my aunt come through. So that's the kind of guy he is, and that's why I'm excited to see him get back into the game. He needs to get back in the game. He's still got a lot in his tank, and I'm excited to see where he ends up.
Man, those are the stories, man. The humanity of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're here to talk personnel and X's and O's and all of that, but at the end of the day, it's about the people doing it and the stories. And man, just thank you, and big thanks to Coach Haase for who he is and the guy that he is in that way. Except for, what, Coach, I think he was actually trying to fatten up your boys with that pizza so that they could just like demolish you the next day. So I think he pulled one over on you that day.
Yeah, they ended up beating us pretty good. But the cool thing about that game for me is that was Willie hit a 3 in that game. He was a freshman that year, and he was a bench player and got in at the very end and hit a 3 at the end of the game. That meant nothing except to a dad who was very proud to see their kid make a shot.
Absolutely. Seen those stories play out time and again. What a neat moment between father and son. That's great. All right, Coach, thanks for those stories. Like, my heart is warmed and I love it. That's great stuff. So we'll keep our eyes on the Luka situation. Obviously, we're going to stay apprised on top of that as much as we can. We'll have another show tomorrow to wrap the week. Remember, no football game this week, but we'll have the rest of our Project 28 whip around looking at the rest of Carolina athletics. And then we'll be back on Monday. It's going to be Clemson game week. They're kind of struggling too, Coach, if we're being honest. So we'll have all that and more. And it's going to be 5 weeks till the Carolina regular season starts as of Monday. All right, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, do it right now so you don't miss a second. If you haven't joined us in the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, you're missing out. It's a great community, lots of great conversation happening every single day. And join the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders to go deeper with our show as well. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.